How much and what types of reading do you do as a sports reporter, and why is it important to you?
It's a great question. I love this question because, so I had a mentor when I was in Illinois, where I grew up. I had a mentor when I was growing up named Brian Burwell. He is a columnist for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch he'd worked everywhere. He worked at USA Today, he was on ESPN Sports Reporters, he was everywhere, right? And he always told me that the best writers are the most prolific readers. So the people who write the best are reading the most, and that stuck with me forever. And I still, to this day, I try to read 4 books a month, as much as I can. And what I do is it's really easy to read sports books, right? Because they're fun and they're about athletes and things like that. But I try to, again, diversify. So I only allow myself 1 sports book a month. Everything else I try to do, an autobiography. I try to do maybe something history related. Fiction occasionally, not my favorite, but I'll work it in occasionally just because those people are very creative, right? So when you read, you're first of all, you're learning things, right, about whatever it is that you're reading about. But you don't even know you're doing this. You're becoming a better writer because you're thinking, man, I love the way this writer told that story. Like, I'm going to incorporate some of his methods or the way he constructs a narrative into my own writing. And so I read all the time. I think reading is so critically important to me. When it comes to school, I'm always going to say this, and I don't apologize for it, but I think reading in English is the most important thing that we can learn, because guess what? It's the thing we use most, right?
Yeah.
So you're always talking to people. You're always going to have to read something or talk to someone, and all of that is informed by the way you handle your English and your reading. So I cannot emphasize enough the importance of that, because I think it's the thing that carries over most in life.
Okay. What type of math do you do as a sports reporter?
More than I'd like to. Math and I didn't get along for a while, but it is something you have to have, because we talked about it earlier, right? Statistics are everywhere, and when we talk about analysis nowadays, a lot of analysis is related to math. So we have batting average, you have slugging percentage, you have RBIs, you have home runs, and you have to figure out how to calculate those things. In the NFL, it's the same way. And when you're trying to figure out trends and things that might be going a certain way for a team, you might say, okay, over the course of the season, they ran the ball this well over the course of a season. But does that really tell the whole story? Because maybe in week 8, they got an offensive lineman who was healthy, and all of a sudden their run game took off. So now I need to figure out how good were they running the ball from week 8 to week 17. So you got all these different, ways that those numbers can work. It's a very numbers-driven world in the sports world, just as much as it is anywhere else, and it can carry over into things, salary cap. So the NFL has a salary cap, right? So every team can only spend a certain amount of money on their players that they have. I'm going to tell you, Jorge, I'm still learning about the salary cap. I've been doing this for 16 years. I know a lot of the rules, but it's hard. It's really hard, especially when you're dealing with millions of dollars and trying to figure out how are they going to be able to afford to sign this player? Can they keep this player when his salary is this much money to stay under the cap? And so there's an endless amount of numbers and math that go into our jobs. And frankly, if I had one do-over, I would have probably cared a little bit more about math when I was your age.
Can you give me 3 pieces of advice for interviewing a high school baseball player?
Interviewing a high school baseball player. Okay. Some pieces of advice. I think, first of all, when you talk to someone, eye contact. Look them directly in the eyes, so that they know that you're there and that you're listening, right?
Yeah.
And you are listening. That's the number 2 piece of advice. The most important thing you can do in any interview is listen to what they're telling you. Listen to what the person is saying, because you can write down 1,000 questions, but somebody might tell you something when they're answering let's say it's your 6th question, and they're halfway through the answer, and you hear something that's really, really interesting. If you just go to the next thing on your list, you might forget about that thing. You might not ask about more. You want to learn more about it, right? So if I tell you something that's super interesting and then you just go on to the next question, you might miss the story. Because the story could be they were ready to take you to this place that you didn't even know existed, and all of a sudden you just kept the car on the road. Sometimes you got to turn that car and go to the right as fast as you can, right? And I think that's the most important thing whenever you're in. And I think even whether it's not an interview or not, like just being a really good listener is very, very important when you're talking to someone, because you can learn something that you never even expected to learn by just asking the right question that follows up. So, and then number 3, I think just being a nice person and being easy to deal with is half the battle sometimes, right? Because in my line of work, sometimes we have to ask hard questions, and it can be difficult. You don't want to have a 350-pound guy mad at you, right? Like but sometimes I have to ask that 350-pound guy why his performance wasn't as good. It can be hard, right? But the thing is, if I have spent the previous however long developing a relationship with that person, and they know that they can trust me, and they know that I'm not coming from a place of trying to be, trying to play gotcha or get them in trouble or something. When I ask them that hard question, they're going to understand that I have a job to do, I'm doing it, and they're going to answer it in a professional way, and we're going to be able to continue to have a rapport. And I think that that's true, again, very true of any dealing you have with anyone, right? When you talk to them. So that would be the 3 things that I would say. Is that good?
Yeah.
Those are good questions. I liked your questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dad, I'll ask you one more.
Sure, yeah. You can ask me 10 more.
Go ahead, keep going.
What is the thing you don't like about your job?
The thing I don't like about my job. Yeah, the thing I don't like about my job. That's a good question. I think everybody has things they don't like about their jobs. I travel a lot, which I like traveling, but it can get old. I'm going to be gone for 10 days starting on Friday, and that's a little hard. Like around Thanksgiving, I don't get to see my friends and my family for Thanksgiving, so that can be hard. But on a day-to-day basis, I don't want to tell them to lie and say there's nothing wrong with my job, but I think here's the thing, and I think this kind of brings this all full circle, is when you find something you're really passionate about, and this is not a Nick original quote, but you'll hear this in the world. When you find something you're passionate about, you never have to work a day in your life. And if it doesn't feel like work, that means you found what you're passionate about, and Paul will tell you that too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.